Welcome to another exciting month of iClub. This month, Jason Cunningham from The Practice talks to us about structuring your business. Plus, we have the market update for October. But first, Jon Sermon from OzForex discusses currency exchange and the overseas markets. I would like to welcome Jon Sermon, Senior Alliance Manager at OzForex, to talk us through currency exchange and the foreign markets. So thank you for joining us, Jonathan.
Thank you very much.
So can you tell us about OzForex? How can you help property investors investing overseas?
Yeah, sure. So OzForex, we're a global business. We've got our headquarters in Sydney. We've got offices all around the world in London, Canada, Hong Kong, the USA itself as well, New Zealand. Really what we do, we are a currency broker. So our remit, our role is helping individuals, helping businesses to organise international money transfers. What we offer is a smart, simple solution when it comes to just transferring funds overseas from one bank to another. What we try and do and how the business has grown over the years is we're all about educating our clients, helping them as much as we can with the timing of buying their funds, how to buy their funds, and obviously get a good exchange rate as well. So we purely deal with the commercial or the business exchange rates as opposed to the tourist exchange rates. So straight away, our clients are getting a better deal by getting more US dollars for their Aussie dollars or more euros for their Aussie dollars. And obviously with the strength of the Aussie dollar at the moment, their money's going even further.
So now how does currency exchange work? What's the basic idea behind the currency exchange rate, and why are things like the Aussie dollar so good at the moment compared to the US?
Sure. So foreign exchange is what we refer to as an over-the-counter product. It means that the price is determined between two counterparties. So this is why the exchange rate you get converting one currency goes from one provider to the other. So it's not like a share price, it's the same price for everyone, So everyone will buy their currency from the wholesale or the interbank market. I guess factors that are going to affect the currency side of things, you're going to have the political and social factors, the governments here in Australia and around the world, the central banks like the RBA, the ECB over in Europe, and of course the Bank of England. And of course, they're going to have impacts on interest rates as well. So when you look at Australia, it's perhaps one of those economies that has dodged the bullet, so to speak, with regards to not going into recession in the GFC. Our interest rates are still quite high over here, about 3.5%. So that's all good things for the Aussie dollar, which is why we're seeing it still fairly strong and hold up against the counterparties as well.
Can you tell me, how did the Aussie dollar end up surviving so well?
It's a good question. I mean, I think certainly coming from an outside, obviously I'm from the UK myself, but coming from an outside, you look at the government's pre-Julia Gillard, there was a big surplus that I think it was John Howard that had built up. And of course, Kevin Rudd gave a few handouts, which kept people spending, it kept the economy going. Obviously, a lot of the mining and the commodity side of things as well is very good. Your relationships with China and other overseas counterparties as well, it's all been good for the Aussie dollar. So that would be probably the reasons surrounding it.
Exchange rates are really one of those things that you really need to consider when you're first looking at buying property overseas. So what do investors actually need to look for? How can they know they are getting the best buy they can in US dollars? Sure.
So in line with, I guess, the due diligence you would do on your properties that you're looking to invest in, I think as much attention and research is needed when you're looking actually at the currency side of things. Certainly with the Aussie US at the moment, a lot of us are used to that parity level being over that 101. We've seen a high in the last 12 months of that 110, but the average rate over the last 10 years has probably been around 89 cents. So of course, for Aussies looking to buy overseas, their Aussie dollar's probably never gone as far. In terms of what to keep an eye out for, when you're looking at pricing the properties in the US, you always know what the price is because it's obviously in US dollars. Of course, you don't know what the cost is in Aussie dollars until you actually organise that transfer. So I would say it's always worth keeping an eye on what's going on in the markets, keeping an eye on your costs, getting as many quotes as you can do, keeping up to date, because actually that's the amount of money you're going to be transferring over. And of course, a swing in the Aussie dollar or a swing in the currency pairs, whether it's a few cents here or a few cents there, it's going to make the property more expensive or cheaper for you. And obviously from an OzForex point of view, we want to make sure we're getting you the best deal as long as we can in that time frame that we've got to work with you with.
What are the benefits at the moment for Australians looking to buy in the US?
Yeah, sure. It's a question we get asked a lot. I mean, the last few years have been a great time for Aussies looking to invest overseas on the back of the strength of the Aussie dollar. You know, I think the last 10 years we've seen a high of around 110. The average rate over the last few years has been about 89 cents. So we're above that parity level. So the Aussie dollar is going further than it has done for a long, long time. And of course, with what's going on in the US, you know, where they've had the foreclosed market, and of course a lot of the banks now own the properties, there are bargains to be had. That's obviously changed over the last few years because of the popularity doing it. But of course, it's something to keep in mind on that side of things as well.
How long do you think it'll be until the US dollar rises again? And do you think it's going to be a sharp rise?
It's a good question. I guess it's probably one of those crystal ball questions. You know, no one really knows. You know, there's a lot of economists out there that think that by the end of the year we're going to be back below that kind of 90 cents level, and there's some economists out there that think we're going to be higher than that 110 level. So there's even disparity between some of the big operators out there in terms of what's going to be going on. You know, over the last perhaps 7 to 10 days, we had the US announce, you know, their quantitative easing strategy again for the third time. So we saw that little blip in the Aussie US dollar where we reached that 106 level. It's quickly consolidated, so we're knocking around to that 104, 105 level. But I think while things remain as they are in the USA, while things remain as they are over in Australia here, you know, our interest rates are still so much higher. Our economy is still stronger as well. So we'll probably see these levels last for a little bit. But of course, you can never say never. You know, you can never, with the currency markets or any real market, you can never say 100% this will happen. But I think in the medium to long term, we're going to be knocking around that parity level to the 105 as a wide range.
How can an investor be sure that he's actually getting a good deal in a different currency?
Foreign exchange is like anything. You know, it's like getting a car insurance quote or a mortgage quote. It's best to shop around. You know, we always encourage our clients to shop around, get an idea, and get a good rate of exchange. Make sure the quote that you actually receive is everything involved. So, for example, when we quote a client, whether it be online or over the phone, that is everything. So that's none of the fees, no commission charges, anything like that, no bank receipt charges on the other end. So if we're quoting $1.05, they're going to be getting $1.05. That's everything. So I'd say make sure there's no hidden charges on the back of that. And of course, make sure you're getting that top level rate, that business rate, as opposed to the tourist rate that we perhaps, you know, you would see in the airports.
What should investors be avoiding when they're looking for the best foreign exchange rate?
I'd say probably just avoid the hidden charges. You know, when transferring funds back and forth from different countries, there's going to be sometimes some bank receipt charges from the other end. There might be those commission charges, those transfer fees that I spoke about earlier. Just trying to avoid that. I mean, it comes back to what OzForex is all about, keeping it smart, simple. You know, the rate again that we quote is what you receive, so you don't need to worry about anything else.
Should investors always be concerned about currency exchange rates and the fluctuations that come along with them? You know, is there a possibility of having fixed exchange rates, or will it always be variable depending on the currency exchange rate?
Sure. I think you've always got to be aware of what's going on when you're dealing with overseas payments, you know, because currencies will always fluctuate. That is something that you can guarantee. You know, there's more currency traded in a day than there are stocks and shares in a year. All right, so it's a big animal that you're dealing with. So, of course, you're always going to have to keep an idea of what's going on. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about, you know, doing your research and knowing what levers that are going to trigger and pull the markets. In terms of mitigating your risk and getting a bit of an idea of what's going on, there are tools that you can use. One of these tools is called a forward exchange contract. And in essence, what this enables you to do is buy the currency now, pay for it later on, but you fix that rate of exchange now. Now, what happens is we would need, for example, a 10% deposit to secure that rate. But of course, you know how much things are going to cost you, and you've taken the currency out of consideration. Now, if the currency swings in your favour, hard luck. If it goes against your favour, then we're going to be getting a call to say thank you very much. But it's kind of along that line of fixing your mortgage payments on an interest rate. Over the first 2 years, you know what you're going to be paying, which relates back to what I was saying earlier. You know the price of the property, how much is it going to cost you? So that's something. We also have something called a regular payment, which in essence, for those people starting to perhaps bring their rental income back into Australia, what we can do is set up a direct debit from a US account to their Australian account. And what we do, Mia, is we fix that rate for 12 months. So the client knows exactly what they're going to be getting back as an income as well. And because typically the payments are going to be smaller, the currency swings aren't going to have a bigger impact. But of course, there's still all those zero fees, zero charges. So they're going to know what they're going to get as well.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us here at iClub. How can our members get in touch with you if they're looking for more information on currency exchange rates?
They can use me as a point of contact, so they can give me a call. My telephone number is 02 8667 9106 or email me at jonathansermon@OzForex.com.au.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mia.
And now, iClubbers, let's welcome to the program Jason Cunningham from the practice.
Thanks for having me, Mia. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Now, tell us about conference. What are you here to speak about?
Yeah, good question, Mia. I guess for mine, my whole life, I've been an advisor for now 15 years, and one of my big passions is the issue around financial literacy in this country. I think we've got a really big issue when it comes to financial literacy. When I think back, and I don't know about yourself, but when I think back to school, I learned a lot about history, geography, trigonometry. I did physics, maths, but no one ever taught me anything about money. And it wasn't until I went into business that I really started to understand and comprehend that money in itself, and understanding and managing money and making money, is half science, half art. So I said art there, by the way. So that's one of the things that gave me the inspiration to go into business and write my book. And at the conference, I'm going to talk about a magnificent opportunity that I believe exists, which is purchasing property using a self-managed super fund.
So tell us about self-managed super funds. What are they?
Okay, good question. So when I talk about a self-managed super fund, or when I talk about the environment that is super, superannuation exists for us when we get into retirement. So a self-managed super fund is a fund that you manage yourself. Rather than having someone else or another fund manager, per se, manage your fund, you get the opportunity to be your own fund manager, if you like. And you take on this crazy role where you become a trustee of your super fund, but you also become a member. So you have obligations as a trustee to look after the members yourself, but you get to set up a trust, and it's very similar to like a discretionary trust or a family trust, which is quite commonly known, except the difference is you can't access those funds until you retire. And typically retirement age is around 60 years old, albeit that you can trigger what's called a transition to retirement at the age of 55, but for all intents and purposes at the age of 60. So those funds need to be preserved until you get to retirement age of 60 or above.
And so how is it doing it yourself and self-managing it more of a benefit than going into one of these companies and them looking after it for you?
Yeah, good question. So let me say off the bat, Mia, that a self-managed super fund is not for everyone. And that's a really important point that people need to understand, because as you alluded to, you then become responsible for the management of that super fund. So not everybody has the time, the nous or the know-how to be responsible enough to manage their own super. And some people, would prefer for someone else to take on that obligation or that responsibility. The other point is that to justify setting up a super fund, you need to have a reasonable amount of funds in there. Now, typically in our firm at the practice, we argue you'd need to have at least 150 to 200,000 to warrant its establishment, because there's a cost to set it up. There's also an administration cost to run the fund. And what I mean by that is there's a tax office fee, there's accounting fees and audit fees every year. So you've got to have enough money in the super fund to warrant its establishment, but also you've got to have the time and the responsibility and the know-how to be able to manage it. But I think for a lot of the people, a lot of the attendees here at our conference, they're the type of people that like to take their own destiny into their own hands rather than leave it to the responsibility of some fund manager. And so therefore, it's these type of clients that say, yes, a self-managed super fund suits me.
So are you more likely to be audited if you have a self-managed fund?
Yes, good point. So as at 30th of June 2011, there was 450,000 self-managed super funds in this country. And a super fund is very different than most other entities that get lodged. So when I talk about entity, individual, company, trust, a super fund has the requirement that it needs to be audited prior to lodgement. Okay? So I know that looks a bit strange, but when I say audited prior to lodgement, what happens is you need to prepare financial statements and do a tax return with an accountant, and then you need to get an independent auditor to actually audit the fund prior to it being lodged with the tax office. So the tax office puts the onus back on the trustee to make sure, by engaging an external auditor, to make sure that the behaviour of the trustee is of the nature that's up to the tax office's standards, if you like. So the mere fact of having a self-managed super fund doesn't mean it's going to trigger more audits, nor does it mean it's going to trigger less audits, but the biggest thing we need to think about is that extra obligation of having an external auditor audit it prior to its lodgement. There's still every likelihood that you will be audited at some stage, but we have that extra layer of protection, if you like.
Well, now we're on the topic of the super funds and superannuation. How do property and superannuation work together?
Yeah, so that's a very open-ended question, but I think it's great. So I'll go through three scenarios, if you like. The first is a situation where, let's say, I've got a couple, Mia and John, and they've got, for the sake of this argument, they've got 800,000 inside superannuation, and they see a property for 500,000, so they can use the funds in their super fund to go out and purchase that property. We need to remember and understand that the property then becomes the ownership of the super fund. Okay, so it's not as if you can buy that property. Oh, look, that's a nice holiday house down there in Portsea or Sorrento. You can't use funds out of your super fund to buy the property, then go and live in it as a holiday house. We need to remember that rule, the sole purpose test of a self-managed super fund, is to provide benefits for their members upon retirement. So you buy it as an investment and you rent it out or do whatever, and you're hoping you're going to get your capital appreciation and it's going to provide good yield through its rent. Another opportunity is one that's becoming quite popular, is there's an opportunity that exists now where we can use gearing to purchase property inside super. So previously, and when I say previously, prior to, I think it was about December 2007, super wasn't allowed to, self-managed super fund couldn't borrow money. But one of the last legacies of the Howard government was now the ability to use a super fund to borrow. So what the process is you can have, say, 150,000 in super for the sake of the argument, see that investment property for 500,000, pay a deposit from your super fund of 20%, say 100,000, pay the cost through the super, and then set up another structure called a bare trust, which there's a bear in, a bare trust is like a naked trust, which means it only exists for the purpose of owning something on behalf of someone else, in this case a super fund, and you can borrow to buy property using super. Now, the biggest exciting opportunity, I've used that word a couple of times, but the reason I get so passionate about it is this. Superannuation, the environment that is superannuation, its tax rate is only 15%. When you compare that to an individual, the top marginal rate is 46.5%. So it's less than 1/3. And so it gives us now this chance to, rather than take after-tax money and go and pay a deposit on an investment property, you can take money, contribute it into super, get a tax deduction for it, and then use that money as your deposit on an investment property. So in essence, you can make a deposit on an investment property and get a tax deduction for it. Now, as an accountant, that obviously excites me, unnaturally, no doubt, but as an accountant, paying tax somewhat disturbs us. And so if you can utilise, and make no mistake that too many people get caught up with the number one reason they make an investment decision is to get a tax deduction. That should be the last. We need to, when we make an investment decision, we need to ensure that that investment is going to increase in growth and it's also going to provide us with a really good yield. But if you can pick up a tax deduction on the way, why wouldn't you do it? But the kicker, Mia, is this. Once a super fund goes into pension phase, and what I mean by pension phase is once you get to the age where you decide, I'm going to draw a pension from my super fund, and let's say you get to the age of 60 and you decide to do that. instead of paying tax at 15 cents in the dollar, it reverts to zero. So if you can imagine this scenario with you and John, I think I refer to as your partner, and it's not really John, it's just a fictitious person, but you've been looking at him all afternoon, which is sort of, I don't think that's right. But say you and John have an investment portfolio of, say, I don't know, $2.5 million, which is returning you $200,000 a year in yield. And you own that in your own name. And you retire and you live off the rent of your properties and you followed Steve's advice and, you know, things are going great. If you earn $200,000, I think the tax on that would be the best part of about 85 grand. If those investments were owned inside of super and you triggered your pension, then you receive that $200,000 tax-free. So for mine, that seems to be a no-brainer, right? 200,000 versus 120 after tax. And so that 80 grand difference, and then if you compound that over 10 years, that's 800,000. And let's hope that we live longer from 60 to, let's say we live till we're 80 years old, that's $1.6 million. I mean, it's a pretty simple equation, isn't it? So it's a fantastic opportunity, and I thank John Howard for his eyebrows and for that decision.
Thanks, John Howard. That was a perfect decision. We absolutely love it. Wow, okay. There's all these things I didn't know.
There you go.
There are ways out of taxes.
Yeah, well, we pinched a phrase from Kerry Packer, who's was a very wise man. He said that we should pay tax, but we should not pay a penny more than we should. Okay, and I think it's very important to pay tax because we live in a country, and I don't want to get all philosophical and jump on my soapbox and talk about politics because, you know, we don't have that much time, and then I'd start to get very disturbed. But I think it's important that we do pay tax, but we pay the right amount. Because it's like anything. I mean, we spoke off air before about your habit with shoes and how much shoes you're buying. You know, if you can get the same pair of shoes for a different price or a cheaper price, obviously you're going to go with that opportunity. And the same thing exists with the tax system, I believe. Yeah, there you go.
Well, let's go into something completely different.
Why wouldn't we?
Yeah. Let's go into the structuring of businesses and how that relates to property investing. Do you have to have some form of a business name and a structure of the business? You know, all those different types. Is it the same as running a shoe shop? Do you need to
Back
consider...
to shoes again?
Back to the shoes. Do you need to consider partnership companies?
Yeah, definitely. So, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, in Australia, we're becoming more and more like the United States. And the reason that I say that is because I think the number one reason for choosing a structure is not for tax purposes, but rather for asset protection purposes, particularly those of us who are in business. And the reason I said that we're becoming more and more like the States is because over there, every man and his dog wants to sue somebody for something, and it's, I should never take responsibility for my own actions. It's your fault, Mia, that I'm in this situation, not mine. So I think it's really important from an asset protection perspective that we structure our assets correctly, whether that be our business assets, whether that be our personal assets, or whether that be our investment assets. So from an investment assets perspective, as we're talking about, there's no doubt in my mind that you need to consider the appropriate structures moving forward. What's also very important is what suits me and doesn't necessarily suit Louise. You know, one of the great things about this country is we're all different, thank God, and we all operate in different circumstances where some of us are married and a few kids, or, you know, or whatever. Some of us are single, and some of us are in business, some of us are not, some of us are on high taxable income, some of us are low. So you need to ensure that the structure you have suits where you're at in life and also where you're going. So yes, structure's really important. I think I probably took about 2,000 words to say one word, which is yes.
What's a better way to do it? You know, if it's in a partnership, it becomes sort of personal, but a company's a separate sort of entity from yourself.
So sorry to cut you off. I think the first thing, Mia, that you need to do is before making an investment decision in property, I think you need to speak to an advisor, your accountant, and get an understanding of the pros and cons. Okay, so I'll give you two examples. Example number one is I've got a business owner who operates a successful business, and it's a profitable business, and he operates his business in a discretionary trust, or typically referred to as a family trust. He sees the opportunity to purchase an investment property. Now, because he's in business, there's a chance of litigation. Because he's married and got a few kids and got the opportunity to distribute income, you know, chances are, using a discretionary trust for him to own that investment would be the good opportunity, because A, if he gets sued, he doesn't own the asset's owned by the trustee of the discretionary trust, and B, it provides him with the flexibility to distribute his income, or even if he had losses in that, say it was a negatively geared property, if he had losses, he could distribute profits from his business trust into that negatively geared investment. There's another situation where, let's say I have a salary earner who's earning a significant salary and looks at the opportunity of buying a negatively geared property. Now, I know that it's better to buy a positively geared property than a negatively geared property. I'm all over that, but sometimes, in the first 5 or 6 years, the property may be negatively geared due to depreciation and higher interest, etc. So, one structure that avails you to not only the opportunity to get the negative gearing benefits and getting a refund on your tax, but also sets you up for asset protection is using a fixed trust, or commonly referred to as a unit trust, where the trustee of the unit trust would own the property and the investor would borrow money to buy units in that unit trust or fixed trust, and the income you receive is a trust distribution of rent, and the expense you have is the interest. So you can negatively gear that property, so to speak, but without actually having the onus of owning the property. So, if you were to get sued, all you'd have actually is a loan that matches the unit. So the bank, as we know, our great friends at the bank, they always support us and do the right thing by us, as we're well aware, but they have the first mortgage over that investment.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I hope so.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It did. We always like it when it makes sense. So let's talk about your book. Tell us about writing it and why you decided to write a book.
Yeah, okay, so off the bat, writing a book is a big challenge. There's no doubt about that. Look, I've been in the public speaking arena for a while, and someone put the premise or the opportunity for me to write a book, and I thought, why not have a crack at it? So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm really passionate about the financial literacy issue we have in this country, and not everyone gets the opportunity to get access to financial advisors. So I thought, why not have a go at writing a book? So I wrote a book called Where's My Money? And it's 10 surefire ways to keep, grow and earn more money. And I write it in basic, simple language. So as you hear me speak now, when you read my book, and I know you've read it and you're a big fan of it, a lot of people say, gee, Jason, it sounds like you're talking. So, and so I guess, the proudest day in my life, I have 3 young boys, twin boys, Jack and Lewis, who are now 10, and another young fella called Tommy, who's 5. And I live in Moonee Ponds in Essendon, and walking down Puckle Street, walking across the road, we used to, every Saturday, after I'd written my book, every Saturday we'd go to Angus and Robinson, I was getting excited, hopefully my book's there. I think we went 2 or 3 Saturdays in a row and it wasn't there. And on the 3rd or 4th Saturday, I remember walking across the road and my boy Lewis said to me, look, Daddy, there's your book, and that for me, I mean, I get a bit emotional now, but that for me, was outstanding. And I remember writing a book, and, us boys, we love our mums, your mum, no one can beat your mum. And I remember saying to Mum, gee, Mum, I'm really scared about writing this book. She said, why, Joe? And I go, so the last thing I want to happen is walk down Puckle Street and out the front of the bookshop, those $2 bins, and there's my book, for $2. Mum goes, no, that'd be great. I could buy heaps of them, Mums always look at the positive side, but we should probably talk about the detail of the book rather than me talking about my family.
Yes.
Yeah, so look, for me, when it comes to making money, the key, whether it's making money, whether it's running a business, whether it's relationships, whether it's losing weight, being fit, whatever, 85% of it's got to do with what's in your ears. So for mine, it's all about mindset. So in my first few chapters, I talk about things that we understand, but we don't put at the forefront of our decision making. And what I mean by that is, in this country, we've all got this same disease. The more I earn, the more I spend. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so I talk about that philosophy about, the only way to get ahead in life from a financial perspective, and understand that not everything's got to do with making a financial decision, but I believe the only way to get ahead in life financially is to take money off yourself. See, most people don't budget, and those that do a bad job of it. And most people that budget go, okay, well, what did I earn last year? What did I spend last year? This is how much I'm going to spend on my rent or my mortgage and my Foxtel and blah, 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 and away we go. The way to budget, and the only way to budget, is to work out first, what do you want to achieve? Okay? so these are my goals and objectives. What is it going to take to achieve that and over what time frame? And then work out how much money I'm earning and take an amount off yourself. Now, I'd like, there's a book written a long time ago called The Richest Man in Babylon, right? Which is a common, I'm tipping everyone here has read that book, and they talk about taking 10% off yourself. Well, for me, I challenge it myself, and I try to take at least 20% off myself, plus your super, which is 9%, you're putting away 30%. Take the money off yourself and put it in another account. Because when you don't have it, you can't spend it, And so I start on that journey. I talk about how to build appropriate budgets, and then I talk about the opportunities that exist for us, whether it's how to buy property the right way, how to structure your loans correctly, because I see countless clients of mine that structure their loans incorrectly and don't maximise the tax deductibility. I talk about how to buy shares and how to invest in the share market, and a lot of people are scared about the share market, but for me, I enjoy it. It's frustrating me at the moment. Those people in Europe are annoying me. People get nervous about Greece, and our share market dropped 12% last month, and market sentiment's frustrating, and without getting into too much detail, but the irony is the Greece economy is less than half of New South Wales economy. And Australia, we're 1.7 of the world's GDP, but anyway, that's a whole different kettle of fish. And then I talk about how to structure things, whether you're using a discretionary trust, whether you're using companies, and how to use super funds. So, my mum reckons it's in the top 4 books ever written. The Bible, the Quran, War and Peace, and coming in at number 4 is Where's My Money? But I think Steve's probably sold a couple more than me. I think he's going just okay.
No, you've always got to trust your mum.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Always believe what your mum says.
Especially when she's saying good things.
So tell us about the practice. How do you help investors?
Yeah, okay, really good question. So, a history of the firm, my partner, Rob, my business partner, Rob and I started our firm on the 1st of December 1997. So we're about to turn 15. So we're well and truly teenagers. And our story is that we went to primary school, high school and university together. Sort of a bit incestuous, I guess. We went our own separate ways and we came back together and started our firm. And I think back to those days now, we had a little shop front in Ascot Vale, and Rob was in one office and I was in the other. We drilled a hole in the wall, got a cable together, and away we were networked, and away we went. And in our first year of business, we turned over $60,000. We got paid $100 each a month. We were 24, and our peers were 34, 44, 54. And we were kids making no money, advising people on how to make money. But one of the smart things that we did was we got together with a business coach. I think it's always important to have an advisor or a mentor or someone that you can check in with. And he told us of the importance of focusing on your purpose, or what is it that you do for people. And he helped us develop our mission statement. Now, we've had the same mission statement now for 15 years, and that is to help our clients achieve both their business and personal goals, and we do that through proactive service and ongoing advice. So when someone like you, Mia, says to me, hey Jason, what is it that you do at the practice? I tell you, or tell them, about that mission statement. It's all about 4 key areas. Number 1 is that I'm here to help you. Number 2, we help you achieve your goals. Not mine, not Steve's, not anybody else's, but your goals. We like to do that proactively, and most importantly, we like to have an ongoing relationship. So straight off the bat, if we can't live up to that mission statement, we say thanks, but no thanks, we're the wrong firm for you. The second thing, which is really important, are our core values. You see, the most important part of our business are our team members. Today, or 15 years ago, we had 2, now we have 40. There's 40 of us lunatics running around. I can't believe it, actually. But in our office, our team is so important. So we need to create an environment that's not only conducive enough for key people to come and work for us, but also adhesive enough to hold on to them. So we have some core values that really mean a lot to us, and they are: we care for our clients and our team members, we work ethically and we have integrity, we love to have fun at work, as you can tell, you can't take life too seriously, and we're committed and passionate about what it is that we do. Specifically, our services are as follows. We provide accounting, tax, asset protection advice. We have a wealth management arm to our firm, traditionally referred to as a financial planning business, and a lot of people say, ooh, we don't like financial planners because you know, they charge a percentage of funds under management and all that sort of stuff. Well, we don't operate in that vein. We have our own financial services licence, so I'm not an authorised representative of anybody else, AMP or MLC or anyone else. I'm an authorised representative of myself. And the advice that we give our clients is pure strategy. And coupled with that, we have a finance solutions arm where we help people borrow money in the most tax effective way, whether that be to fund the growth of their business or their property acquisition or investing in the share market. But in short, we see ourselves as advisors for people that are wealth accumulators. If you're interested in moving ahead and getting on in life and want to go to the next step, then we're the right firm for you. If you're just after somebody to lodge your paperwork, that's not us. You're better suited with someone else. I hope that explains.
It does explain it. So, how does somebody become financially literate?
Yeah, I could give you a cheesy line to say, "Buy, where's my money?" But I won't. How do we become financially literate? That's a super question. What I do know is this. Knowledge, in my eyes, knowledge is power. And so I believe, as investors and as professionals, I believe we're on this continual journey to improve ourselves and also to achieve our goals and objectives. For most of us, it's for our family and to provide a better life, if you like. So therefore, because we live in an environment where things are changing all the time and we need to adapt to change, I think it's a continual journey. I think attending seminars like what Steve's put on this weekend, that's outstanding. And I believe there's going to be 1,200-1,500 people there. I mean, what Steve does, I've got a fair bit of respect for him because, he's a best-selling author, but he does it because he loves it, right? And you can see his passion when he's helping people and genuinely, caring about people. I think that's important. So I think the first thing is you need to take things into your own hands and learn as much as you possibly can. Just as important to that, I think you need to surround yourselves with the right people and the right advisors and people that are going to know stuff that you don't really need to know, but are going to tell you the detail that's important to you. So for mine, I think it's those two answers. Maya?
Fantastic. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us on iClub, and I'm pretty sure everybody would have learned a lot from you.
Hope so. Thanks for having me, Maya.
Appreciate it. Thank
Good
you
to
so
see you
much.
again. Thank you.
He's an expert in the property field, a lecturer, a developer, and a wealth of knowledge. We're excited to have Peter Koulizos back with us again. Thanks for joining us, Peter.
Thank you, Mia. My pleasure.
Well, it's getting to the end of the year, so how are the states going for property prices?
Well, to put it in one commonly known phrase, it's very much up and down. We've got Brisbane houses up, Brisbane units down. Sydney houses up, Sydney units down. Canberra houses down, but Canberra units up. Hobart houses down, units up. Perth houses down, but units up. But in Darwin, Adelaide and Melbourne, both the houses and the units over the last quarter have gone up. So when we put them all together as dwellings, so where you see median dwelling price, that's a combination of houses and units, the very good news is that the vast majority of capital cities have gone up in value over the last 3 months. Perth has dropped 0.2%, which is really neither here nor there. Hobart minus 1.8%, but every other capital city has gone up in value, which is very heartening indeed.
That's good to know. Up is always a good thing to be.
It is. And I know that's only short term, because when we look at the medium term, generally from the GFC to now, things haven't been too good. But when you look at over the last 10 years, and for most people property is a long-term investment, it's great to see that the vast majority of capital cities have kept up with their pace of the traditional doubling in value every 10 years. So we've got Brisbane, Adelaide, Hobart, Perth, Darwin, all increasing between that 7 to 10%, which is what you need if properties are going to double every 7 to 10 years. Melbourne and Canberra very close at 6.5%. Sydney hasn't done too well over the last 10 years, over 3%. But as I said before, the vast majority of capital cities have been keeping up with that historical trend of doubling every 10 years, despite the fact that we've had a very poor 4 years since the GFC.
Interesting. Now, I've been hearing rumours that, you know, the government has been looking at a few ways of getting, you know, new properties built and people into buying new properties, especially in South Australia. You know, buying off the plan can be a risk for investors, but I hear there is actually a new grant available in South Australia. Could you tell us about that?
There is, yes. It was announced yesterday. Under the new grant, home buyers can receive $8,500 for a new home, regardless of whether it is their first property, and that goes until the middle of next year, June 2013. So that's technically not a first home buyer's grant. The key there is that you have to be buying new, and first homeowners building or buying a brand new home will be eligible for a total of $23,500. So the reforms altogether, so what we've got happening in South Australia in a nutshell is the 8,500 housing construction grant for all buyers of brand new homes, as I said before, regardless of whether it's their first home.
Sure.
And this applies to properties up to a value of 400, and then it's slowly phased out up until 450,000. So you still get some benefit at 450, but obviously not as much as 400. Now, there would be people in the eastern states thinking, my God, what can you buy brand new for 400 or 450? Well, in Adelaide or South Australia, which is the cheapest mainland capital city, you can get a lot.
You can get quite a good deal.
Yes. Now, that money replaces the existing $8,000 first home bonus grant. The first home owners grant goes from $7,000 to $15,000 for first home owners who build or purchase a brand new home. But for those first home owners looking to buy established homes, the grant drops from $7,000 to $5,000, and then by June 2014, it'll disappear. So basically, so far as the state government is concerned, the medium to long term is to only give grants to people who are buying brand new places, whether it's apartments or homes or townhouses. But the federal government grant of $7,000 for any first home owner still exists. And basically, when you include all the state government grants, all the federal government grants, plus the state government concessions that they're currently offering on off-the-plan apartments in and near the city, it works out to just under $40,000. Now, $40,000 in Adelaide will buy you a lot of house.
That's brilliant.
Or sorry, will be a lovely deposit on a lot of house.
That's a fantastic start.
It is excellent. It's certainly one of the best ones that I've known in Adelaide, South Australia, over the last 25 years.
That's fantastic. And it comes in as soon as you buy the property, just, you know, obviously some off-the-plan places, development slows down, and so you don't really sort of end up in the house until, a lot later, but it is on the buying set.
That's right. So it's providing you sign a contract in that time frame, and that starts immediately. That starts from today.
Sure.
That will certainly help the Adelaide property market, and it's a very clever move because, for example, the federal government grant of $7,000 for established and first homes, for new homes as well, really has the impact of just increasing property prices because you're increasing demand, but not necessarily just concentrating on increasing supply, whereas the state government is actually not going to increase property prices because even though demand is increasing, it is only increasing for new supply.
That's brilliant.
So, those people, there'll be many people that, it doesn't have a huge impact on established homes, but obviously for those of us that own one or more established homes, it's not so good. But This is really just a kicker for the construction industry, because not just here in South Australia, but all over the country, it has really been in the doldrums for a number of years. And I know, unfortunately, building companies are folding here in Adelaide and South Australia, and they're also doing the same all over the country. So if we can encourage some new construction, and in this case residential construction, it's certainly going to help lots of people in the long run.
It really will push for new houses and new development. That's fantastic. As a developer yourself, you must be really excited about this.
Yeah, look, and I have a number of developer friends who are having trouble selling property in this market, but with this new incentive, now their new properties, providing they're below 450 and preferably below 400, you would think would be snapped up certainly before the middle of next year, when in theory this extra money runs out.
Well, looking into that, obviously, if you're looking to buy a new home, you would be looking more at the outer suburbs. Is it a better idea to look at the outer suburbs with the growing infrastructure to, say, an inner city suburb that has already built and developed infrastructure?
The general principle is you're better off in inner city suburbs that are already well developed, because there is limited supply. I mean, I've just done some few basic math sums here just to illustrate the issue. So if you go from the city to 5 kilometres out of the city in a circle, you've got to, and if people remember the high school maths, an area of a circle equals pi r squared.
Yes.
You've got a total of 75 square metres of land within 5 k's out of the city, right?
Right.
But if you go to that ring, which is between 5 and 10 kilometres out, you increase the available land to 225 square metres. So we've just tripled the amount of available property just by heading out another 5 k's.
Wow.
So if you're looking for capital growth, the closer you are to the city, the better off you are. However, one of the very, very good leading indicators of capital growth is where the government is spending their money, and mainly in the form of infrastructure. So some of the areas that are really benefiting from infrastructure at the moment are the southern suburbs of Adelaide, generally in the Marion Council, the Onkaparinga Council. We have a duplication of the Southern Expressway, which is going to help a lot of the suburbs in the Marion and Onkaparinga Council. And then also we've got an extension of the train line from Noarlunga Centre to Seaford, which is going to benefit suburbs like Port Noarlunga, Christie's Beach, Port Noarlunga South and Seaford itself. So, look, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy out in the outer suburbs, because if you want to, if you're looking for a property to live in and you want something brand new, and in particular now in Adelaide with all these grants, and it's going to cost you less than $400,000, there's an excellent opportunity to get into almost your dream home. Yes, it might be 25 or 30 k's away, but especially if you work out that way, then it's not a problem.
No, it's perfect.
And if you can buy down south with all this extra infrastructure is happening as we speak, then certainly you will get some capital growth. So here's an opportunity to get into the market with money that wasn't around certainly yesterday, and in theory is only around for an extra 7 or 8 months. I think there is a great opportunity to get into the Adelaide and South Australian market.
Fantastic. Well, look, in a nutshell, as the last question, what would be your advice to buyers going into November? What's the best strategy for them?
Okay. Look, I'm very heartened by the fact that interest rates went down last month, and I think there'll be one more movement down, whether it's next month or December. So, firstly, those people looking to buy, start hunting around for good deals. And the other thing that I really like for property investors, because generally we tend to be quite risk averse, because if we weren't, we would be getting into the share market.
Sure.
Is you might want to consider fixing your interest rate, because this is one of the very few times in the interest rate cycle where fixed rates are below variable rates.
Yes, they are.
So there's an opportunity, if you're considering on holding onto the property, say for at least 3 to 5 years, to get a fixed 3 or 5 year loan at below 6%. And none of the major banks have a variable rate below 6%.
Wow.
So not only is it a great time to get into the market, but it's also a fantastic time to be fixing your interest rate, assuming that you're looking to hold on to the property for at least the length of the initial fixed period.
So it's a good time.
It's a horrible time to sell, I have to be frank.
Yes,
it's
true.
a horrible time to sell, but it is a fantastic time to buy. And interestingly, December and January, I think, will be an even better time to buy. But we can talk more about that at our next interview.
We can go Christmas shopping for property.
That's right. That's right.
Sounds like a plan. Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Peter.
My pleasure, Mia. My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for another month of iClub. Property investing is just like any business. The more information you have, the better. So if you would like any more information on the topics discussed this month, please feel free to email me at mia@propertyinvesting.com. See you next month.